Hey there, Squirrel Army! Today we're discussing efficiency versus upsides. If you're enjoying the content here, you can join the Squirrel Army by subscribing. So, I sort of said this in a somewhat recent episode where, you've got a lot of spells that are out there, especially nowadays, that have like Nature's Claim. Let's take that for an example because it's a pretty good one because I've got a very good counterpoint to it, which is a very efficient spell. Not the most efficient, but very efficient at least, which is 1 mana to destroy an artifact or enchantment, and then the opponent gains 4 life. So that's a very efficient spell and comes with a slight downside, but most people would be like, well, that downside just does not matter because, hey, I'm getting to destroy an artifact or enchantment for such a little investment that the downside is outweighed by the efficiency of the spell. So that's that there. So I don't really care about the destroying the artifact for 1 mana and giving them 4 life. That's fine because it's only 1 mana and I don't have to think about anything else. Another spell that I want to talk about in comparison is Ruinous Intrusion. This is a spell I don't know whether too many people know about this spell, but it's a 4 mana spell. And immediately I know a lot of people are going to just groan at that and be like, well, 4 mana, I'm just not playing it. But it's a 4 mana spell, which is an instant, and it exiles target artifact or enchantment. But then you get to put X+1/+1 counters on target creature you control, where X is the mana value of the permanent exiled this way. Now, I really like this spell because it gives you some other upside. And that is very useful. Now, yes, sometimes you won't get that upside. So, yes, 4 mana to exile an artifact or enchantment isn't that amazing, but if you happen to get the upside, it's pretty darn good because, again, you're advancing whatever board state that you've got and giving yourself more options. So, yeah, that's not the best spell in the world. Tear Asunder is actually a really good spell, and if you are in black, I do recommend that one because that does have an extra other upside to exile any permanent, but hey, that is still 4 mana to exile any permanent on Tear Asunder. But still, that in the Golgari colors is still a very powerful spell. But at any rate, still, this is the crux, I guess, of the argument. Is efficiency the most important thing, or is an upside the more important thing? And some players will say, well, I want something that gives me an upside for, playing the spell, even if I'm not always going to get that upside. If I always get the upside, then that's really good. But, of course, as I say, exile-based removal is, premium removal, so you can't kind of argue to too much of a degree with, exile-based removal. The next cheapest in terms of converted mana cost, exile-based removal that is mono-green would be Fade into Antiquity, which is a sorcery. So there's that. But there's certainly a lot of Destroy Artifact or Enchantment, and there's Beast Within, obviously at 3 mana as well, but that does destroy anything. But I love exile-based removal because exile-based removal is just so much more powerful, and again, that comes at a premium, so sometimes I'm willing to pay that premium in terms of mana to get that effect because it's so useful to get rid of things that you just can't get rid of, like Perthros and things like that. Some of the gods are very difficult to get rid of, especially when they're not creatures 9/10 of the time or whatever else. So, yeah, and sometimes, well, it's a bad murder. Well, yeah, it is bad murder, but it's exile murder. So that's there, but again, you always get this back and forth between the two clashing ideologies of, magic, because I always assess things to say, well, yes, if I had this at 1 mana, 2 mana, or whatever, then obviously it's better than something that is at 4 mana, or whatever. It's if I have this at 1 mana, or if I can pay 0 mana, it's obviously better in terms of mana value and tempo and whatnot and all of that sort of stuff than something that is 4 mana or 5 mana or whatever it is. But at a certain point, also, I go, well, I don't want to give my opponent 4 life, even though that's a very minor downside for the most part. And hey, wait a minute, exile removal is premium removal. So even for something like Tear Asunder, hey, wait, that's 2 mana. So 2 mana isn't too much more than, 1 mana. So yes, I will pay 1 more mana to exile a thing. And yes, maybe I have to be in Golgari plus colors, but at least there is that for those colors. And when I start looking for other artifacts or enchantment destruction, and this applies to all kinds of spells like murders and whatnot, go for throats, etc., or board wipes, or anything else that exists out there. There are always better versions in one way or another of a lot of spells. They keep printing more and more of these spells, which is good. It gives everyone the chance to play the type of spells that they want to play or they need to play, like Force of Vigor. That's just, in theory, a free spell. You have to discard one of your green cards to pay for its cost, but then you get to pay it for free, but you get to destroy 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. So pitching 2 cards to get rid of 2 cards isn't the best, but isn't the worst, but at least it's 0 mana. And again, it says instant speed, so again, that's super powerful. It's not exile-based, but hey, that's still 0 mana to destroy 2 things. You've got to pitch 2 things, essentially, but that's still fine. So, again, that debate will always be there. I'm not going to settle that debate, I don't think, but it's an interesting debate to kind of think about, I think. So, it's one of those things that, comes up that people will say, oh, I'm not playing that, it's 4 mana or whatever. No way I'm playing that. And then other people will be like, bro, I'm glad that, this spell exists, or I found out about this spell because this is going to help me out so much. I've been playing this, 6 or 7 mana spell, or whatever it is that, often doesn't really do a whole lot. Now, of course, again, Ruinous Intrusion there isn't always going to do something else, and some other spells are going to do something else guaranteed. So there's always that part to think about, whether you're actually going to constantly get the value out of something or not, or what the value is. Is it worth paying that extra couple of mana for? And getting yourself ahead also helps you perpetuate your own game plan. So I really like that idea of, hey, well, yeah, sure, I could play Swords to Plowshares, which is an amazing card, but again, I could play something else. And again, that gets you out of that metagame of, wow, I'm playing the same thing that everyone else is playing, which is kind of cool because, I'm playing something that, maybe not everyone thinks about, not everyone knows about, or that has kind of flown under the radar. People forgot that this spell came out because, there's been 50 sets in the last 5 minutes, or whatever it is. So not really anyone has really thought about this this spell and whatnot. So, yeah, it gives that chance to some spells, or it works really well in this deck, because, A, I can put those +1/+1 counters onto something else if my commander or whatever, if the creature that I do put it on dies or whatnot. So, hey, I can put them on whatever it is. You can put them on the Ozolith. Yeah, the Ozolith. There and store up those counters and whatnot, and then utilize them later if they do kind of get rid of your creature and whatnot. So there are other things that you can do with it because, hey, if it's synergizing, hey, look, I'm getting +1/+1 counters. My deck is a +1/+1 counters deck, so it loves getting +1/+1 counters. So that is something that is well worth it to me because, hey, that works with the synergy that I'm actually working with as well. It's not just a generic upside. It's something else that really helps out the specific game plan. But if it's not, then at least if it's something decently good, like normally good or whatnot, like just ramping or just getting card draw or whatever, then maybe that slight extra increase in mana might be well worth it. It might not be to some people, as I sort of say, but to some people they go, wow, why haven't I known about this spell before? This is actually secretly a bomb card because, hey, it helps me out in 2 areas. It helps me get rid of something of my opponents, and it helps me draw a card, or it helps me ramp, or it helps me do this, or it helps me do that. So yeah, it is well worth it to me for at least some people to be like, hey, I'm going to take this card that's slightly more inefficient, but offers me the upside because probably the extra mana investment, as long as it's not too much mana, is probably well worth it as long as that upside nets me more than what, in theory, the downside of something that is more efficient aids my opponent. So there's always going to be that to and fro. Maybe there's a good middle ground between them, but hey, it's up to you guys to decide what's better for you and what works for you, I think. And at least that's the way that I look at it as well. I don't really take too much advice from too many people who think they really know what they're talking about when it kind of comes down to, well, this is what I'm doing, and this works with what I'm doing, and it works better for me to do this because if I'm going to get any kind of benefit out of it, then at least that's working with me getting a benefit for what I'm doing rather than I'm just helping you, even if that's not really that relevant in some regard. I don't know, because I think it's just as relevant to be helping myself as much as I'm helping you in that regard. Like, why am I giving you something to just have this super efficiency? I get it. Super efficiency is great, but it's one of those things. Is the efficiency that I'm actually getting worth me giving you that, that upside? Or should I just go for something else and just be like, oh, okay, I'll pay a couple extra mana, but it helps me out? So that is the thought process behind that, and you guys can debate it if you really want to, and whatnot, and tell me what you guys think. And yeah, I will respond if you guys want to discuss it down there in the comments. But hey, hope you've enjoyed the thought process at least, and hope to see you guys in the next one.